Boker Tov. Today's daf is daf Mem Beis and Baba Basra. As we learn for Achenu Kol Beis Yisrael and Asum Batzor V'Shivya. We'll start again from near the bottom of Mem Aleph and Beis. We started this topic yesterday. 5 lines from the bottom of Mem Aleph and Beis. Shloshu v'kuchos mitztarfim. 3 different purchasers can add up. Three successive purchasers. One bought after another. In other words, Reuben owned the karka. He sold it to Shimon. Now, when he sold it to Shimon, there was no shtar. Shimon did not retain his shtar. Had he retained the shtar, there's no issue. He's got the bill of sale. Shimon was there for a year. He sold it then to Levi with a shtar. Levi was there for a year. That's the second year. Then Levi sold it to Yehuda with a shtar. And now the question is, Reuben comes and claims the land. And he says, I don't know what you guys are doing here. You guys bought it from, Levi bought it from Shimon. Yehuda bought it from Levi. Yeah, but it's my land. Where did you get it from? You got it from Shimon? Okay, let's go to Shimon. Shimon, do you have the bill of sale? No, you don't have it. But I've got 3 years of chazakah. I was here a year. Levi was here a year. And Yehuda was here a year. And I have proof that I sold it to them. So the Gemara says here, and they add up. Amar Rav, Kulam b'shtar. Kulam means Levi and Yehuda. Obviously, if Shimon would have the shtar, there'd be no issue. Shimon's got a shtar. I bought it from you. If you come to me, I've been on the land for 10 years, and you come to me, hey, this is my land. I bought it from you 10 years ago. Here's the bill of sale. He doesn't have that bill of sale. Okay, but the other ones do. So Shimon and Levi and Yehuda's year of chazakah adds up. Shimon says, listen, I bought it from you 3 years ago, just over 3 years ago. I don't have the shtar. I don't have to have the shtar. I have 3 years of chazakah. Okay, it wasn't me. I bought it. Then I sold it to these guys. What's the difference? It's 3 years that you haven't claimed the land. What's Reuben's complaint? Reuben says, I never saw somebody. If I'd see somebody on the land for 3 years, I would have said something. I saw one guy 1 year, one guy another year, one guy another year. I thought they're all playing around. That's not a chazakah. So the Gemara says, no, that is a chazakah. That is a chazakah because they have proof. In other words, Shimon doesn't need the shtar because he says it's over 3 years. And Levi and Yehuda were legitimately there. Says the Gemara, Lamemer, the Savarav shtar is like called. In other words, so what's the difference if Levi has a shtar or Yehuda has a shtar that he bought from? Because Reuben could have heard about it. Reuben could have heard about it. He says, listen, okay, you know how Levi got the land, he bought it from Shimon. And Shimon claims that he bought it from you, except that he doesn't have to have the shtar after 3 years. So Rav's saying, if you have a shtar, that's good. Only a shtar, only if you sold it with a shtar is there a kol. A kol is like a rumor, or it's generally known that you could have heard about it. It's public knowledge. But not Adam. In other words, Rav says this case that 3 people are mitzvara. Again, Shimon claims that he bought the land from Reuben. He doesn't have to have the shtar because it's 3 years later. In between, he was there a year. Levi was there a year. He sold it to Levi, and Levi sold it to you all legitimately. If there's proof, there's a shtar that Levi bought it from Shimon and Yehuda bought it from Levi, that's okay. It should have been known. It was well known that he bought it, and Reuben should have said something. If he claims that Shimon was on the land, he says, well, I don't know what Shimon was on the land there a year, then Levi was on the land, and Yehuda was on the land. I thought they were playing around. No, they weren't playing around. Levi bought it from Yehuda legitimately. There's a shtar. And Yehuda bought it Levi bought it from Shimon legitimately, and Yehuda bought it from Levi legitimately. You should have heard about it. So therefore, it is a good chazakah, and Shimon and the land stays where it is in the hands of the machzik. The current tenant, the current occupant is Yehuda. Says the Gemara. So why does Rav say they all have to have a shtar? Levi and Yehuda had to have a shtar. And if there's Adam, that's not good enough. It has to be dafka with a shtar. If there's Adam, Levi bought it from Shimon, and that Yehuda bought from Levi, that's not good enough. Adam lesu kala, that's not well known. In other words, whether there's a shtar, we know has a chazakah because the stam shtar is written, as we said, for achrayas. Rashbam says that it's written for achrayas, meaning it's an obligation. If I write a shtar, if I sell you land, and there's a bill of sale, that means that I'm obligated to that. If anybody bought subsequent property from me, you have a first lien because it was written a shtar. And we said achrayas is tov sofer, we paskin that even if I didn't write in it that all my land is subject to this deal. If this deal, somebody takes away this land from you, you can go after my other land. Even if he didn't write that in there, it's considered in there because it's a mistake of the sofa that he didn't put in there. It's a recognition. But here the Gemara is dealing with. Rav says it's got to be with a star when Levi bought it from Shimon and Yehuda bought it from Levi. Rav said, if I sell you a field with Adam, if I sell you a field just with Adam, there is no bill of sale, just Adam saw the transaction. How did the transaction take place? You made a kinyan or a kesef or even though there's no star, there's only Adam, but I sold it to you, let's say for cash, and cash requires karka. You can collect if that land is subsequently taken away from the lookout because for whatever reason somebody else had a prior lien on it, right? He can still collect from all other properties that he had, even though other people brought property later on from this seller. You have a right to do it because people should have known about it. So what do you see? A mocher sadav, even with Adim, again, you have a mocher, you have a seller and a buyer. The buyer bought it just with Adim. There is no star. Still, the buyer is entitled to any property that the seller has if it's taken away from him. Mashma, that there is a call that people should have heard about it. Otherwise, in other words, subsequent, this buyer bought the field from the seller. And for some reason, this buyer, there was a prior lien on it, it was taken away from him. But other fields that were taken away from subsequent buyers, this first buyer has a right to it, even though there was no star. He has a right to it. So what do you see over here? That even if you sell it with Adam, there is a call, it's generally known, and the subsequent buyers had an opportunity. They should have known that there was a prior lien, that this guy had other obligations. Gemara says, no. The truth is that only when you sell it with a shtar, when Rav says these things, the three successive occupants constitute a chazaka, it's only if there's a shtar, not with Adam. Adam don't constitute a call. So what's going on over there? How do you say over here when a buyer sells a field to a seller, when a seller buys a field to a buyer, sells a field to the buyer, and the field is subsequently taken away, or it turns out he's not the owner, whatever the reason was, he's entitled to go after subsequent buyers. How would other subsequent buyers know about it if there was no call? How would they know? Today you have registries and you have lawyers who check it all out, but how would they know? The answer is, Gemara says, Hasam L'kuchos, we're at the top of Membais now. Hasam L'kuchos inu afsinam shayil. There, the subsequent buyers, you have a seller and a buyer. The buyer bought the field, and if it's taken away from him for whatever reason, he's entitled to go after other subsequent buyers from the seller. Either is no call for Adam. The answer is they still should have checked things out. Why? Because when they're buying something, the buying field, when you put your money down, you should have checked it out. It says Rashbam at the top of the page. The shavu, the innocent of shayu, the shadows of zayah b'chti. They threw away their money. Like sharim lachko yafa. They should have checked out im machar shum karka b'chrayis. When you buy something, if there is no registry, right? Pretend there's no registry, there's no tabu, there's no surveys, whatever they have today, wherever the things are registered, the land, there's no land registry. You buy a field from somebody. First of all, you want to know how do you know he owns it, right? And does he have any prior obligations that they would have a first lien on your property? You're buying it from him. Yeah, but maybe he sold other property to somebody else last year. And if that falls through or he didn't really own it, he can come after land you're buying. You should have checked things out. So there, even though there was no coal, but they should have checked things out. But over here, in the case of the three lakuchos, that we said the three successive, Shimon, Levi, and Yehuda, why should the protester, meaning Reuven, who claims he's the original owner and he never sold it, you shouldn't lost him, even like a star? What did Rav say? It's only if there's a star. We said if there's three successive occupants, that constitutes chazaka. It's only if Levi bought it from Shimon with a star, there's a star, and Yehuda bought it from Levi with a star. But if there's no star, how would he know about it? There is no, just with Adam, he wouldn't know about it. Why should he even check it out? Einlav said Amar, says Rashbam in the third line. The kivin the lek a star, the mechir talalu, below yatsa kol, the meilo yolachka. Why should check the Meim Amar? He says, you know why there's three different occupants on 3 different years? Because nobody really has a claim to it. I didn't know that he bought it. In a case when you're buying property, you should make sure that the guy who's selling it to you has has the rights to it and that he doesn't have any other obligations. But over here, why should we said that the three successive occupants constitute a chazaka. Why? Because Reuven would have heard about the fact that his field was sold from Shimon to Levi and from Levi because it was with a star. A star has a code, comes public knowledge. But if it was only with Adam, it's not public knowledge. You say that if I sold the field to somebody else, the buyer has the right to go after subsequent buyers if this deal falls through. That's because the subsequent buyers had a right to check it. It should have checked it out. If you're buying something, make sure that there's no other obligations. Nobody else has a lien on your property. Says the Gemara, did Rav really say that? That what? That Rashbam says that the mechiras karka b'achrayis be'edim without a star you can collect from subsequent lekuchos. Did he really say that? That's what we said at the bottom of the page. If you sell your field to somebody else, the buyer has the right to go after subsequent ones, even though there was no star, because and we're saying now there's no star, there's no coal. So they should have checked it out. Do you really say that if you sell a field to somebody else with Adam without a star, the buyer can take it from subsequent people, even though there's no star, because they should have checked it out. By the time we learned, if I lend you money, and we're not talking about a sale, we're talking about lend you money with a star. If I lend you money with an IOU, and as we said, Stam Star has achrayis l'chasam, has achrayis, even if the guy didn't put it in there, I'm entitled to go after other properties that you have. Let's say you don't have the money to pay me back. I'm entitled to go after, even if you admit that you owe me the money. Because if you were technically, we say if I only lent you money with Adam, there was no star, I can only collect from any available cash that you have, not from properties that you sold. In other words, I lent you $100 today. Tomorrow you sold the field, let's say for $50, whatever, to somebody else. And now when I come to collect the money, you admit you owe me the money, but you don't have any cash. You don't have any money. So what do you say? If I lent you the money with a star, I can go after that field that you sold the next day. But if I lent it to you with Adam, that's not good enough. I can only go after Chasam B'Charim. I can't go after your subsequent property. Now, why do you say that? You just said that Amocher Sada B'Adam, I can go after the Chasam B'Shabanim, even after landed property that you sold subsequently, I can go after it. Here you see that you can't. So Rav, you're saying the one hand, Rav says, if I sell a field with Adam, you know what? The buyer is entitled to go after other properties that I have that I sold subsequently. But if I lend him money with Adam, I can't. So how can you say these two things go against? Here we have a Mishnah which says that. In other words, Rav said that if you sell a field with Adam, the buyer can go after subsequent buyers who bought land from the seller. Here you see the Mishnah says that if it was only with Adam, you can't do that. The Chitema, Rav Tanapalik. Now I'll tell you what, Rav argues with the Mishnah. Right. The Mishnah says that if you lend money only with Adam, now even if you lend money only with Adam, you could the lover could claim I paid you back. That's legitimate. But here the lover admits that he paid him, that he owes money, just doesn't have any money, and he has no cash, nothing else. I sold the field to somebody else subsequently. Yeah, but you're not entitled to that. If you only lent me the money with Adam, you're not entitled to those assets. You don't have a lien on those properties. Rav argues with this Mishnah. But Rav Shmuel, we see that they don't argue. Rav Shmuel Damar Tavayu, Milva al Peh, again, a loan without a star was just oral, even though there's Adam. There's Adam there. The Adam who saw it take place, cannot collect from people who inherited fields or from other people who bought fields from this borrower subsequently. Now Rashbam points out that even though the halach is we don't exactly paskin like that, the halach Rashbam points out that a milva peh could collect from yorshim. In other words, if I lent money to somebody, I lent him $100, and it was oral, there was no star, and afterwards this guy died, I can collect from yorshim. That's the halacha, but you can't collect from people who bought property from him. So you see, Rav and Shmuel agree with the Mishnah. They agree with the Mishnah. So here we have this problem. If you say that by a sale, if I sell property to Yankel and then this deal falls through, he can go after subsequent buyers of my property. He has a lien on all my property. Where if there was only Adam, and when I lend money to somebody, I'm not entitled to go after subsequent people that he sold his property to, subsequent buyers. What's the difference? So the Gemara says, Milva Zvinakorm, she's asking a kasha from a loan versus a sale. Milva, I'll tell you what the difference is. Again, if it's with a star, there's a coal. People know about it. And that's why, back to the first case, when Reuben sold the field to Shimon, Reuben says, I didn't sell it. Shimon says, I did buy it from you, but it was over 3 years ago. And the first year I was there, the second year I sold to Levi, here's the star. The third year Levi sold to Yehuda, here's the star. That's a chazaka, because Reuben should have heard about it. He should have known that people are selling his land. He shouldn't have just assumed that people are only there, they're wandering through the land. If it was with a star, he would have heard about it. If it was oral, may not have heard about it. It's not his fault. He wasn't supposed to check it out. He didn't know anything. He claims he never sold the field to Shimon. Shimon was on the field 1 year. Levi was another year. Yehuda was another year. So what? They're just playing around. There's not been that for 3 years. Why? Because there was only with Adam. There's no coal. So why do you say when it was a sale with Adam, you could go after other subsequent properties? In other words, the buyer has a lien on all of the seller's properties. You can't ask cash from a loan versus a sale. Why? Milva kiki betzinikas. When a person borrows money, he likes to do it quietly. He doesn't want people to find out about it. People who have to borrow money, it's a general rule, applies today too. They don't want it known that they're borrowing money, because that means that they're desperate, and therefore any property that they have will be sold for less. If you know a guy is really in trouble and he's trying to sell his property and he's trying to get raise money, so you'll offer him less money, right? You'll offer him less. If he's under pressure, he doesn't want people to know that, because then when he tries to sell something, he won't be able to get a good price, because people know he's under pressure. Kika Yosef, when a person borrows money, but Yosef, he does it quietly, but secretly, so that his assets should not go down in value. When there's a downturn, people know that there's a sell-off, and the people offer less and less money. That's how the markets work, right? when things are desperate, things keep going down and down and down, right? He doesn't want his assets to be worth less, so people do it quietly. So therefore, when it's a loan over here, like in this case, if you lent the money for only in front of Adam, so then the Malva doesn't have the rights to go after the Lova's assets, because it's not going to be well known that he borrowed the money. People like to keep that quietly. But Svinim, when it comes to a sale, Manda's up, and if a person wants to sell, people are selling property here, they advertise it to 20 brokers and spread the word around. Anybody wants to buy my neighbor's house, it's for sale, by the way. That's just the point of thing. My next door neighbor's trying to sell his house. So Zvine, Manda's of an Ara, but a guy who wants to sell land, but Farhes yourself, he wants to sell publicly. He'll get more offers that way. Guess what? You'll put up a big sign for sale, right? You want a sign there, so you'll get more offers. So when it comes to a sale, that's why in the first case at the bottom of the page, when he said a Moker Sada Ba'edim, he sells his field. Why? Because there it's known, even though it was only with Adam, it's public knowledge, and subsequent buyers should have checked it out. But when it comes to a loan, people like to keep that quietly. So over here, a person sells it, but he wants to get that there should be rumors and that people should find out about it. So there's something in the two cases. Tan Rabbana. Now we're going to have a similar case to the case that we started with. Tan Rabbana. Achla Avshana. Let's say the Reuben owned the field, and let's say Shimon was on the field now. He was there for a year. Ben Shtayim. Then Shimon died, and his son, Ben Shimon, we'll call him Ben Shimon, was there for 2 years, or the reverse. Avshtein, Shimon was there for 2 years, Ben Shona, and the son was there for a year. Does that constitute? That's a chazaka, right? Because people know the son is like the father, right? The father died, the son takes over the Yerusha. Assume he has one son, and the son was there for a year, so that's a chazaka. If afterwards Reuben comes to Shimon's son and says, "Hey, what are you doing on this land?" He says, "We have a chazaka. Father was there for a year, I was there for 2 years, right? We have a chazaka. The star is gone. That's okay." or this is the third case. Ha'av Shana. The father was there, Shimon was there for a year. Ben Shana, then Ben Shimon was there for the second year. But then Shimon's son, Ben Shimon, sold it to a purchaser, to the lokeach. Harei a chazaka. That's a chazaka, right? L'meimer lokeach is like kola. That's to say that if he sold again, there was a shtar, right? Shimon, Ben Shimon did not need a shtar that he took it over from his father because probate's automatic, right? Torah, you don't have to go through probate. Father dies, there's no will, it goes right to the son. There's one son, even if there's a daughter, right? Not like people do today, like the Tekana Bonos, but there's one son. The father died, the son took it, no problem. Now the son sold it in the third year. The son sold it to Levi. Ben Shimon sold it to Levi, a third guy. That's all. A chazaka, lokech, it's like this mashma that he bought it, and he bought it with a shtar. Rashbam says he bought it with a shtar. Rashbam in the third of the wide lines, if you're following Rashbam, right? Shemachalo aben b'shtar. That's a chazaka. Okay, that means that a buyer has a chazaka when it comes to a purchase, just like we said at the beginning of the Gemara. For a minute now, ask a kasha on that brisa. Listen now the other way. Let's say the father, Ruvain, we always use the case of Ruvain's the seller, right? Now, Shimon was made a chazaka on the field of Ruvain, in front of Ruvain. Then Ruvain died. Now, when Ruvain died, he wants his assets to go to his son, right? He wants to ask his son. So now Ruvain's son is the protester saying, what are you doing on this line? Or b'fnei av shtayim, let's say Shimon was on Ruvain's land for 2 years, b'fnei ben shana, and then Reuben died, and in front of Ben Reuben, who's at the third year, or b'fnei av shana, the Reuben was the father, and Shimon was on Reuben's land for 1 year. Then what happened? Reuben died, and he was there 1 year while Ben Reuben was the owner, apparently was the owner, b'fnei ben shana, b'fnei lokeach shana, and then what happened? Ben Reuben sold it to the lokeach. Ben Reuben sold the lokeach. Harei chazaka. That's a chazaka. Now, why is that a chazaka? Shimon was there all 3 years, right? Shimon was the guy who supposedly was occupying the field. He was on the field 1 year when it was Reuben's, 1 year when it was Reuben's son. Reuben died, obviously went to the son, and then Reuben's son sold it to a lokeach. Now we say, yeah, but Shimon's been on the land for 3 years. What happens now? Lokeach says, hey, I've got a written document over here that I bought it from the son of Reuven. He says, yeah, but I've been here for 3 years. I bought it from Reuven. 3 years ago. I don't have a shtar anymore. He says, you know what? Shimon's got a good chazaka. He said, I've been here for 3 years. Now, why? If you say that when did the lokeach buy it from Ben Reuven? After year number 2, right? The first year Reuven was alive. The second year Reuven had died, and it was in front of Ben Reuven. The third year, it was really in the ownership of the lokeach who bought it from Ben Reuven. Shimon was there, was occupying it for all 3 years. We said that's a chazaka. Why is that a chazaka? Why? After all, if you say that if it was sold with a shtar, there's a kol, people have heard about it. So I don't get it. How could when lokeach bought it after 2 years, right? Lokeach bought it after 2 years. So a kol went out, meaning people heard about it. So if he heard about it, Isal Kedaitach says the Gemara, lokeach isle calls a kol, that's a gift at all. I bought it. That's macha, meaning the lokeach is saying, Reuven didn't complain the first year. The second year, Ben Reuven didn't complain. The third year, lokeach went, the purchaser, and he says, I bought it. That's a kol. That's my protest. Remember, we learned before, as long as I could have made a complaint and a plea and said, listen, what are you doing on my land? As long as the word would have gotten to you, that's good enough. Not like Rebuta says you got to say it face to face. As long as you heard about it. Well, if you buy a field, that's macha. That's my biggest protest right there. That's my protest. When you buy property here, what do? You lodge what they call an azhara with the tabu. I'm protesting, meaning nobody else should buy this field because I'm lodging a protest. Well, if I bought it, that's lodging my protest. If you say that, so how can you say that if you buy something with a shtar that constitutes a kol? Like we said in the first case, Levi bought it from Shimon, Yehuda bought it from Levi, and there was with a shtar. If they had a shtar, they all add up together. Right? Reuven should have heard about it and he didn't complain, so they have a chazaka. He should have heard about it. Here too, uh, who should have heard about it? The occupier, Shimon, should have heard about the complaint. Remember, we said the hearing about it goes both ways, right? The protester should hear about it, and the person who's on the field should hear about the protest. So if I bought it, that's a protest. I bought it officially. You should have heard about it. So that should be my mecha. In other words, does that mean? That after 2 years, again, Shimon occupied the land for 3 years. During the first year, Reuben was alive. During the second year, his son, Ben Reuben, was there. At the end of the second year, Ben Reuben sold it to the purchaser. So when he heard of it, so that's a protest right there. What's the deal if you have a protest? If you don't say anything for 3 years and you occupy for 3 years and you claim you lost the document, that's fine. But if you protested, what did we say before? If you protested it in the first year, in the second year, sometime during the third year, then I put you on notice. You better hold on to your star. Normally, after 3 years, you don't hear anything. You lose your star. You lost it with the papers. Right? You lost the papers. The mouse ate it up or whatever. But if I protested, you better hold on to your star. I mean, if you have to hold on forever. We said before. What happens? Remember the case of Mashkanta the Surah. That you're entitled. The Levi, the Loba, gives his field to the Malva to hold on to for 10 years. You lent me $10,000. Okay, you could stay on my land for 10 years, right? For 10 years. And then the loan is paid off. $1,000 a year. It's not rebate because, it could go both ways. You might get $1,000 worth of produce. You might get more. You might get less. It's not rebate. Okay, but after 10 years, what's to prevent the Malva from holding on to the field and saying, I bought it from you 10 years ago. It's more than 3 years. I bought it from you. The answer is the Loba has to protest every 3 years. Within every 3-year period, you cannot let 3 years go by without a protest. And if I do protest, I'm putting you on notice that you're on my field. And then you better hold on to any proof that you have. You have to lodge a protest or show that you protested. In a case like that, where there was no sale, so the Malva actually was holding on to the field. So then Adam have to know, you have to have Adam that I protested, and therefore you're not entitled to it. Right. So here's the question over here. If you say that a chazaka, that when you buy the field, with a star, if you say it's like people hear about it. So why isn't that a b'chol? Why do you say that in the case where Shimon occupied a field for 3 years? In the first year, Reuben was there. He was the owner. Then his son took it over, Ben Reuben. And after 2 years, Ben Reuben sold it to Lokeach. We say, you know what? If he didn't say anything, that's a chazaka. Why? The fact that he bought it should be his protest. That's speaking about when Ben Reuben sold the field to a Lokeach, he sold many fields. There was no call about this particular field because he sold many fields. So he sold many fields. And what is his claim now? The Lokeach is saying, okay, I bought all these fields, and therefore I'm entitled to it. But the Machzik, Shimon, who's been on the field for 3 years, we saw them all those fields, but not this one. I didn't hear about this one. I bought this one from Reuben originally. The old man 3 years ago, before he died, I bought it from him, and I don't have my star anymore. So the fact that you say, isn't there a call if you wasn't that a b'chol when Ben Reuben sold the field to Lokeach after 2 years? Isn't that a protest in and of itself? Because people would hear about it if he sold it with a star. No, because he didn't sell them that field. He sold them a lot of fields, and therefore there was no call about this one. That's how I have to explain this case. Now, the next Mishnah combines many of the rules of chazaka. We've talked about that chazaka, the main idea of chazaka and cheskes abatim is the idea of 3 years. That's for landed property, right? Like a house. We said Evi Knani also it applies, right? But the first Mishnah back on Chavches, what did it say? Cheskes abatim, boros, shichen, ma'oros, shovches, merchos, all these things based about, these are all landed property, karko, based shlachim, a field, avadim, slaves, right? That's a chazak of 3 years. 3 years constitutes what? Proof of purchase if you don't have the bill of sale. Because after 3 years, that's good enough proof you didn't protest for 3 years. But now, what's this other kind of a chazaka? That you're holding on to something. I showed ownership. How do you buy property? According to the Torah, kesef shtar chazaka. Either gave you cash for the property, might be a bill of sale with it too, that's a shtar. But even if there was no bill of sale, I gave you cash, there's Adam, that's also. Or you paid for it, or however I gave it to you, you showed ownership, you demonstrated ownership on it by putting a lock on it, or if it was locked up already, breaking the lock, showing ownership in some way. Now, what about cases? The Mishnah is going to talk about cases where you having the thing in your possession. Now, that's only by karkas, right? By metaltlin, just the fact that if my wallet is in my pocket, it's mine. You can't say it's yours, right? Nobody lends their wallet to other people. I don't even lend my pen to anybody, right? So if it's something that's normally rented out, right? Like if you have a regular pen, a cheap pen, so the fact that it's in your pocket does not mean it's yours, because people lend that out, like kind of borrow your pen, right? But if you have expensive stuff, people don't usually lend out their cars or other metal, right? So missions are like this. So what about a craftsman? Let's think of a craftsman as a dry cleaner. Can a dry cleaner say, well, everything in this store belongs to me? Of course not, because people give it to him to clean, right? Or a shoemaker or whatever. Or shutfin, people who are partners with one another. This gets complicated. Can a partner make a chazak on another one? Can a partner make a chazak? Because the Mishnah says, no, can't make a chazak on that, because obviously we're partners. I allow you to take over the field, or we're splitting the field, etc. We'll see. It's more complicated with shutfin. A sharecropper. Can a sharecropper says, oh, I've been working on this field for 20 years. It's mine. I have a chazaka. No, because it's understood that that you have permission to go in there, and it's not a, or a patrupin, or a guardian. Guardian's taking care of the assets of a child. You can't say it belongs to me. You are a court-appointed guardian. Of course, you're entitled to be there. All these people are entitled to have the item in their possession, but the fact that they have it does not constitute a chazaka. Now here we're talking about usually about even if we're talking about like an umnan, a craftsman, it's usually something that's metaltlin. So the fact that he has it in his possession is not a chazak at all. Rashbam says, look at the second line in the Rashbam, about halfway down in the wide lines in Rashbam, right after we see Masnisen over there. Rashbam said, we're not talking about 3 years. The stam umer lo shayach metaltlin, a craftsman, a dry cleaner, a shoemaker, a repairman, whatever. We're talking about metaltlin. That's talking about karka. So here we're talking about, as we'll see, whether it's karka or whether it's a chazaka just of holding on to something. If I have a wallet in my pocket, that's a chazaka that it's mine. If I have eyeglasses, that's a chazaka that it's mine. People don't lend those things out. So if it's that's all I have to do is it's in my pocket. It's obviously mine. Okay. Yeah. Yeah.
He seems
similar, same thing.
But he dies in grief.
Oh, that's different. He was massacred. That's different, because there the question is, by damaging it, it's like you broke it, you bought it. That's a different issue. But that's umnan. That's a case of an umnan. Can't claim chazaka. Here we're talking about, can he claim that it's his? There we're talking about, if he damages, what's his obligation? Does he because he's the bad guy over there, he's the person who wronged the other guy, so he's only entitled either to the lower, either the whatever's lower, the shvach, the improvement, or his outlay, his costs, his overhead, whatever's lower. That's a different thing. But that same guy cannot claim chazaka. Lo lish chazaka b'nechsei ishto. A man is entitled to use the assets of his wife, calls man that they're married, if it's written into the shtar, into the ksuba for sure, and even if it's nechsei malug, that it's not written into the shtar, she got some assets after they got married that fell into her, he's entitled to use them. They belong to her when the marriage ends, or her family. Right? If she dies first, it belongs to her family, because he doesn't really own it. But he's entitled to use it. So he can say, listen, I bought it from her. 10 years ago. We're married for 50 years. 10 years ago, I bought it from her. I don't have the shtar anymore. No, you can't. It's no chazaka, because these are like the craftsman, or like the sharecropper, or like the guardian. She doesn't mind if you use it. She understands. She lets him use it in order to have a peace in the house. She doesn't mind if you use it. The Gemara will explain that even if he said, I'm not going to use them, still he's allowed to use it. He can't have a chazaka. A man allows his wife to use it, even though she may not be entitled to everything, but he allows it for peace in the home. He allows it. So therefore, she can't claim I bought it from him. All these cases, people cannot claim a chazaka, because it's normal to let people use their assets. Similarly, father cannot claim I bought the stuff from my son. The son lets his father use it. Can a father say, oh, this car belongs to me, I bought it from my son? No, the son lets his father use the car. And similarly, a son cannot claim that he bought it from his father. Father lets the son use the car. Medmar mamurim. When are all these things said? Listen, medmar mamurim, meaning what? What are we talking about? Whether it's for the 3 years of a chazaka of karka, or whether it's the chazaka that you just show ownership, even on metaltalin, the machzik, right? That's when one person is occupying. There's an occupant, and the other guy claims you're here illegitimately. You're on my land. You've got my car. I never gave you permission for this. You stole it, right? That's when we talk about this. Then we talk about the issue of 3 years. If you're entitled, if you're not like, let's call this an interested party. If you're all these cases, all interested parties, they all have right. In other words, they all entered the property with permission. The father to his son, the wife to his to her husband, the guardian to the assets of the child, whatever it was, right? So all these people, there you say there's no chazaka because they were entitled to use it. But the whole issue about is an occupant entitled to something after 3 years, claiming that he bought it, and the other guy's protesting. That's all mamachzik. But if there's no fight, there's simply no fight. We're just talking about we're going back and forth from a 3-year chazaka of property to a chazaka of showing ownership to acquire something. So aval benos matana. Let's say I give you this field as a gift, and I agree. There's no fight. Here, take it. Or achin shechalko, or brothers who split up the Yerusha, right? Let's say there's 3 brothers, they all split up equally. You're going to take field A, B, and C. Each one takes one. So once he takes it, he wants to keep it. So the other brother can't say tomorrow, no, I changed my mind. I want that one. You take this one. Or machzor say a ger who dies with no yorshim, and anybody could take it. First come, first serve. So then you just have to show ownership. No, if you locked it or gutter, you put a fence on it or parrots, or if it was locked up and you broke through it, kosher, anything, I raise a chazaka. That's just a way to show ownership. It says Rashbam 5 lines from the bottom of the page in the Rashbam. All these chazakas we say is not a chazaka. Begam yeshme and dam chazaka mitzarchim experience. Where we're talking about things that are not a chazaka, meaning that it doesn't show ownership, or things that you need 3 years for. That's only if there's a fight. There's a protester who says, "What are you doing on my land?" And the other guy says, "No, I have a chazaka here. I bought it, whatever." But if in front of us, Adam this guy says, "Hey, listen, I'd like to give you this land." There's Adam and all that. There's no fight, just to show ownership. You have to show ownership. This thing. So we're mixing up really different kinds of chazakas over here. Got to be clear. A chazaka. So here, not only we say that a chazaka on metaltalin, you don't need 3 years for it. Just show that it's yours. If it's not something that's meant to be borrowed, again, if it's meant something that's normally lent out. Let's say a neighbor has my pot. I lent him my pot, or I lent him my shovel. Right? It happens. People come. Like Kurt's got a big ladder. People borrow his ladder, right? So that's something that's usually lent out. So the fact that somebody says, "Oh, it's mine," doesn't mean it's yours, because people lend that out. Just like a father lets his son use his car, or a wife lets her husband use her field. Those kind of things, it's no chazaka, right? But if it's just to show ownership, even on karka, you don't need 3 years. If you just we want to solidify who owns what. 3 brothers is putting up a Yerusha. There's 3 fields. Reuben takes 1, Shimon takes 2, and Levi takes 3, and they show ownership. Okay, that's his. The other brothers can't come tomorrow and say, "Let's switch it the other way around," just to show ownership. They all agreed, and there's no fight about that. And there's an Edom that took place. That's a chazaka that shows ownership. That's a chazaka demonstrating ownership. Avur Shmuel, not proof of purchase, but demonstrating ownership. Avur Shmuel, and I'm in Beis now. Avur Shmuel, Levi, these 2 people, Shmuel's father. We find many times in Shas that Shmuel didn't agree with his father. Right? They can argue in halacha. Avur Shmuel, the Levi. These 2 people, Shmuel's father and Levi, Tanu, they learned Shutif ein la chazaka. Right? Our Mishnah, we said Shutif doesn't have a chazaka, and Umnin, right? And craftsmen don't have a chazaka, right? You don't have a chazaka because you're entitled to be there. That doesn't show ownership. You weren't occupying it because the other guy let you there. So those 2 rabbis said Shutif ein la chazaka and Kol Shtein Umin. A shuttiv has no chazaka. Shuttiv, you can argue about whether he has a chazaka or not, because they might be fighting, it might be trying to split it, whatever, we'll see. But if a shuttiv has no chazaka, certainly an omen, a craftsman has no chazaka. You gave me your shoes to repair, you gave me your clothes to clean. Shmuel Tani, but Shmuel didn't learn that way. Shmuel Tani, he learns the Mishnah as umen ein chazaka. Aval shuttiv yesh chazaka. A shuttiv does demonstrate chazaka. He could have, because sometimes he could say, "Listen, I wanted to split it up. Yeah, we were originally partners. Now I took over the whole thing." As a Shmuel goes according to his own svara. Dama Shmuel, Ashutin machzikin ze al ze. A shutav can make a chazaka one against the other, because he could say, listen, yeah, we're supposed to split it, but I took it for 3 years. Why didn't you say anything for 3 years? You know why? Because I bought it, and I don't have the star anymore. But even though you might say that they are interested parties, can they give testimony about one another? Right? You know, brothers and family members cannot give testimony about one another. What about shutfin partners? Right? Usually they're fighting, right? But so the shutfin, he says, could give testimony about one another. They're not considered interested parties. Let's say we're shutfin in something, and we have let's say some expensive item that we share together, and now it was stolen from my house. I'm like a shomer sachar. Why? Because in return for me watching it today, you're going to watch it tomorrow. So it's like we're each paying each other. If I'm a shomer sachar, I'm chayiv on not only Shi, but I'm Geneva and Aveda. So he says partners, they're not exactly like family, right? Sometimes they fight, as we know. Usually they wind up fighting. So Ashit Machzik, and they can make a chazaka on one another. In other words, so Shmuel says that a shutiv, you could have a chazaka there, not like our Mishnah. Ramila, Rav Yehuda. So Rav Abba asked the kasha to Rav Yehuda, the Marsa de Be Rav Zakai. He asked in that particular place. Marsa, usually a burial cave, in the burial cave of Rav Zakai. He asked him the kasha there. I don't know why he asked him the kasha there. I guess they weren't Kahanim, and they were discussing the Torah. It must have been, not within Dalet Amos of the mess, because it was within Dalet Amos that would be a problem, right? Not supposed to learn in front of Dalet Amos of the mess. The Rashbam, the Bach is the Girsa B'Matz Rasha de Be Rav Zakai. That sounds like more in the wine press of Rav Zakai. So that makes more sense in terms of learning. But anyway, he asked him this kasha. Did really Shmuel say this? That a shutta can make a chazaka one upon another, one shutta another. But Shmuel a shutta, when he goes into the other guy's property, his partner's property, it's like he's going with permission. Going with permission means he can't make a chazaka. Chazaka means I'm demonstrating ownership. I'm occupying it. This is my proof of purchase or my demonstration. But the shutta is allowed to go in. Lav when he says a shutta is like Yored B'Shus going into the property, Lav the shutta, doesn't that saying that a shutta does not have a chazaka? So what does Shmuel say? Shmuel says a shutta doesn't have a chazaka, and then Shmuel says shutta is like going in with permission. He's allowed to go in. Going into permission means I'm not demonstrating ownership, and my 3-year occupation would not be a chazaka at all. Depends on the situation. Did he go into all the property or only to half? Okay, so it depends. Now, Amila Hagisa from Hagisa. So as Ram explains, some say both. You could see both ways. If he took over, if the shutta occupied all the land, all they had big field and occupied the whole field for 3 years, all right, that shows a chazaka. The other partner should have said something. If he only occupied his half, he's okay. He wanted that better half. That doesn't show a chazaka. Why? Because he can say, okay, I'll take this half. This is a better half. I'll occupy this year, or even for 3 years, and then you could take it the other. We'll switch halves the other year. And some say the other way around. No, that if he shows ownership on half, that means he meant to say, I want to keep it. You keep your half, I'll keep my half. If I earn for the whole 3 years, you know what? If I went on the whole field for 3 years, okay, I'll take it for the first 3 years or 4 years, and then you take the whole field for the second. That's the way of dividing up their shared partnership could go many ways. Some say, listen, okay, you work it for 5 years, and I'll work it for 5 years. So maybe that's not demonstrating ownership. So it all depends on the situation, how you read it. No, in both cases, the partner occupied the land for the whole field. So I would say in one case, it's not a chazaka. In one case, it is. One case, it's like he went with permission. In one case, the field was big enough. Remember, we learned at the beginning of the Masechet that if the field's big enough, or the chatzer is big enough, that they could split it, 4 amas for each one, besides the way opposite the door. If it's big enough to split, and he took the whole field, he occupied the whole field, even though they could have split it, and the other partner didn't say anything, that shows that he demonstrated ownership. But if it's so small that you can't split it, so obviously, if you took the whole field for 3 years, that doesn't show ownership because we couldn't split it. Obviously, you took it for 3 years, and I'll take it for 3 years. So different ways to learn it. But the point is that Shmuel says that a shutav can demonstrate ownership. Sometimes it doesn't work out. Sometimes it works, and sometimes it doesn't. Kufam Shmuel. Shutav kiyar b'shustami. A shutuf is like he goes down, it's like he occupies the land with rishus, and therefore it doesn't show ownership. What's he saying? That shutuf, the gear says shutuf eino chazaka. He said, before he said shutuf yesh chazaka. So the question is really on his lashon. We've already explained that sometimes sometimes a shutuf does show ownership, sometimes it doesn't. It depends on the circumstances, right? But here he says shutuf kior. It's like he goes in with rishus. What's the chiddush over there? That shutuf doesn't have a chazaka because he goes in with rishus. So lema shutuf ain't a chazaka. Let him say in one case shutuf has a chazaka, sometimes doesn't have a chazaka. What's this lashon of shutuf? Is like going out with permission. Rav Nachman and Rav Ravua Lomer shenotu b'shvacha megil ksafim b'sada she'ein asui lita kasada suita. We have a rule like this. Let's say you go into my field. I have a field that I plant soybeans there, whatever. You go into my field and you planted trees. You planted trees, and now it grew olives or grapes or whatever. So the rule over there is if you did it without my permission, it's not made for planting. You did it, so you get the lesser. Like the case of the damaging the wool that you talked about before. You get the lesser, either the lesser of the shvach or the lesser of your outlay, because you did something without permission. However, if a shutuf does that, he gets the full amount of the whatever grew. He's entitled to it, because that's what he means. If the stuff fully grew, apples or whatever it grew, grapes or olives, whatever, even though it's not made for planting, even though he went in there, he didn't have, it wasn't the field that was made for planting trees, etc., olive trees or whatever, it wasn't made for that. But it's like, since he's a partner, he can take advantage of that. He wasn't supposed to do that, but since he's a partner, it's like he went in. So in this sense, he has an advantage. So here we're not talking about a chazaka or not. A shutuf, sometimes he has chazaka, sometimes he doesn't. Shmuel said a shutuf can make a chazaka because their relationship is not like a husband and wife or family members or whatever, and that they grant permission automatically. Sometimes he is showing ownership. We did split it up. So shutuf can make a chazaka. On the other hand, he has permission to go in this sense that if he did something without permission, he's still entitled to get all the fruits that it grew to when the fruits matured. All right, we'll pick up here tomorrow, Mitzvah Shem, continuing this discussion about what shutfim could do to one another. Have a good day.